Well, a warm welcome to today's talk. It's Sunday, the 5th of December today, and we'll see how the technology goes today. Now, yesterday I wanted to show you some orientation slides, which I'll do that today. I've just updated them all, so I've just updated them in the past half hour or so. And then I want to look at the beginnings of this pandemic, and I'm going to announce quite an interesting survey. At least I think it's interesting. And then we're going to look at the end of this pandemic as well, what is going to happen in the next few months. And things are starting to firm up, at least in my mind, things are starting to firm up. So it'll be interesting to see if you agree with me or not. Now, let's just try and start here with some orientation slides. Now, these are the cases per day. So we notice that Taiwan really has done remarkably well. I mean, Thailand has kept these cases down to virtually zero. They've actually managed to contain the Delta variant. New Zealand also looking promising at the moment. I think the jury's still out on New Zealand. We won't know for sure for a little while, but Australia, the genie is well and truly out of the bottle. And we actually looked yesterday at how things have changed in Australia in terms of philosophy. The government is now realising they're going to live with the virus, certainly in New South Wales and Victoria. And the aim is to start opening up by hopefully by about sort of December for international travel too, if you wanted to go to Australia. But let's carry on with this first of all. So the United Kingdom, carrying on up, Canada, slight increase. Netherlands went beautifully down with their vaccination programme there, and then Ireland is coming down as well with their vaccination programme. The United Kingdom, well, I'm afraid we are still going up gradually, as indeed is the United States. And as I've said repeatedly, I'm much more worried about the United States because of the low levels of vaccine than I am about the United Kingdom. There's troubles in both countries, but the United States could still turn nasty over the next 2 or 3 months is the danger time for the United States. But we'll be looking at some detail on that as well in a minute, which is pretty interesting. Moving on up, well, we'll wait for the reveal. You know what country it is already, but cases are just way up in Israel, way up in Israel. So that's that first slide in terms of cases. Now, this next one here is number of patients in hospital per million. So these are hospitalised. So again, this is pretty interesting the way this is panning out. So Netherlands, okay, good. Canada, low but increasing. Ireland, still increasing in Ireland, interestingly, still increasing. Now, in Ireland, cases have been going down for a few days. So we believe hospitalisations will start going down as well in Ireland, but not yet. They're not there yet. Moving up, the United Kingdom, hospitalisations are increasing. Now, Israel, we noticed that despite the very high number of cases, the number of people actually in hospital is comparable to the United Kingdom, and in fact it's going down. And this is partly because of the vaccination programme that's already taken place in Israel, but perhaps more importantly, in Israel they're now giving booster doses of vaccine, which is one approach. It's not necessarily the correct approach or the one that everyone's going to go for. It's an approach, but it does seem to be working in Israel as they're giving booster doses of the vaccine to those that are most vulnerable. So that makes a lot of sense in the Israeli situation. Moving on to the United States, well, clearly at the top of the, if we get the technology right, clearly at the top of the list there. So we've got the United States, then Israel with much lower numbers, United Kingdom, Ireland, Canada, Netherlands. So that's people actually in hospital at the moment, actually hospitalised as we speak. Now, there's a couple of other interesting data here. So this is share of the population fully vaccinated. Now, Taiwan, we notice they've contained the Delta variant, but on very low rates of vaccination. Very low rates of vaccination indeed. Let's hope they get their act together on that pretty soon. Now, Taiwan is a medically sophisticated country, but they've had trouble with vaccine deliveries sometimes for obvious reasons. New Zealand and Australia. Now, the vaccination rate at 30% of the population doubly vaccinated, the vaccination rate in Australia is not high enough for Australia to open up. It's that simple. If they open up now rapidly, there's going to be massive spread of the Delta variant with the hospitalisations that come, particularly in the unvaccinated. So they're planning on opening up gradually, which of course is the right thing to do. So Australia, Taiwan, New Zealand, Australia moving up. United States, well, the vaccination rates there are going up, but relatively slowly. Doubly vaccinated, not too much over the 50%. Now, Israel, we noticed that the vaccination rates are high, but they've plateaued a bit, and we are getting some waning of immunity in Israel. There is waning of immunity, although the protection against hospitalisation and death is still good. Canada and Ireland overtaking everyone else in terms of vaccination rates. So doing remarkably well in those countries, although, as we've seen, hospitalisations are not yet down to where they'd like them to be. Now, this is the R equals 1 value here. So that's R equals 1. We're going a bit to this. This is quite an interesting one. So what we see here on these R values is that Taiwan, remember that's the R equals 1 there. So Taiwan is below. Ireland is just below. Netherlands are just above. Then the United States, Israel, Canada and Australia all pretty well above. And New Zealand appears to be remarkably high with an R value of, what is it, getting on for 2, 1.75, 1.8 maybe. But that is on a relatively low number of cases, so it doesn't give us the most accurate view because it's on a relatively low number of cases. So that's kind of orientation as to where we are at the moment. As you probably gathered, my second screen is to the left, not in front of me. But the technology, we are getting there. It's a process. It's a process. So we want to have a look at what's going on now. Now, here we see a report from US intelligence, because I wanted to talk about the beginning and the end of the pandemic. So I'm talking first about this is first on the beginning of the pandemic. Now, this is from the United States intelligence community. Now, they are unable to decide whether this virus had a natural origin or came from a lab. They can't decide. They can't make their mind up. They're split on it. And what surprised me was that in the United States, apparently there's 18 agencies responsible for intelligence activity in the States. And the Office for the Director of National Intelligence, who's like the big cheese in charge of all this, he's basically come to this conclusion. He said, well, we don't know, we're undecided, we're split, we're divided on the matter, which doesn't really help you and me very much. But time is running out. There's an agreement now that time is running out for this, for us to find out, because the biological evidence simply doesn't last. If we don't find out soon, we may not find out ever. WHO panel on this said soon it will become biologically impossible, which is bad news. The window of opportunity for conducting this crucial inquiry is closing fast. All agencies assess that 2 hypotheses are plausible. These are direct quotes from the American intelligence people here. This one's back to the American intelligence agencies. All agencies assess that 2 hypotheses are plausible: natural exposure to an infected animal and laboratory-associated incident. So we've got a definite maybe on both options there. Pretty unhelpful. Several agencies, natural exposure to an animal infected with or a close progenitor virus, but they're not sure. They only give that a low confidence. They don't know. They think that might be the case. Some agencies, but they're not confident. Low confidence. Other intelligence agencies, moderate confidence that the first human infection was likely due to a laboratory-associated incident at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So basically, what we're saying here is the balance of opinion in American intelligence is that this was probably a laboratory leak, although they haven't got the definitive data to know for sure yet. But that seems to be the way that they're leaning. Right. And they add that at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the coronaviruses have been studied in bats for decades. So looks like they think, if it wasn't a laboratory leak, it's a bit of a coincidence. Now, President Biden is not a happy man. Critical information about origins of this pandemic exists in the People's Republic of China. Yet from the beginning, government officials in China have worked to prevent intelligence, investigators and members of the global public, health community from accessing it. So in no uncertain terms, President Biden here is saying, well, there's a cover-up. This is not even particularly diplomatic language. Now, whether I think there's a cover-up, whether you think there's a cover-up, you can have your own conclusion on that, and you're going to in a minute, hopefully. But President Biden seems to be fairly decided on that matter. The world deserves answers, and I will not rest until we get them. And of course, I agree completely that the world deserves answers. Not only that, there's going to be another pandemic. We need to know about what's going to happen here, what's happened here, and this could save millions. And without exaggeration, I don't want to be melodramatic, but it is possible that there could be billions of deaths, literally billions of deaths from a future laboratory leak. That's not ludicrous, because some viruses are highly transmissible like measles and very deadly like Ebola. So it is not ludicrous to say that. Or smallpox could leak again. Smallpox could get out. We don't want smallpox to get out, do we? That would be terrible if smallpox got out again. So this is important for these reasons. Now, China thinks that the foreign minister of China thinks that this report is anti-science from the intelligence agencies. Now, we know the American intelligence agencies have been recruiting scientists as fast as they can, and we're sure they take some of the best scientific opinions in the world. But the foreign minister in China says the report is anti-science. And, this is really a problem, because this is kind of an epistemological problem, the study of knowledge. People are saying, look, we can't trust the science. Well, science is just human beings trying to ascertain that which exists in reality. So it really is quite concerning to me if we can't trust science. Anyway, he thinks it might have come from Fort Detrick, so I'll let you draw your own conclusions on that. And of course, we do know that the Wuhan Institute of Virology has been studying these bats for years. Now, here is a direct link. Now, this is a survey I have made up. This is on my link. Now, this link should take you directly to this voting page. Now, what I've done here is I've asked this question. The SARS-CoV-2 virus had a natural zoonotic origin or escape from the laboratory. So you can click infected humans through natural zoonotic spread from an animal, or you can click infected humans after it escaped from a laboratory. They're the two choices I'm offering, and I think at least one of those is correct according to the US intelligence agencies, all 18 of them. So click on that link there. And now so far, 2,700 people have voted on this. And infected humans through natural zoonotic spread, I don't know if you can see that, but that's the number there is 21, so 21%. Infected humans after it escaped from a laboratory, 79%. So we're at 21 to 79 at the moment. So that's interesting, 21 to 79. And I've been watching this, of course, I just put this on this morning, but I've been watching it carefully. And that 21 to 79 has been roughly the same for about the last 1,000 or 15 or over 1,000 people who voted on this. Now, I'm not saying this is going to arrive at definitive truth. Of course it's not. But I find that really interesting. 79% of you out there believe this had a laboratory-based origin. Now, I'm not going to give an opinion. At this stage, I want you to vote for yourself. So at the moment, the vast majority is in favour of a laboratory leak. Now, this is incredibly interesting. Now, if we could get large numbers on this, if we could get something like 1 million people voting on this would be really quite significant. And whether it's going to change anything in the real world, I don't know, but sitting here doing nothing, or you sitting there doing nothing, is going to change nothing in the real world, so it's worth a try. Now, I must admit that in the past, when I've said people put your hands up to vote for things, I actually can't really see you then. So this is the way to get your opinion out there, and I would certainly encourage you to do so. Please do that, and we'll be reviewing that on a very, very regular basis, of course. Now, endgame of the virus. So that was the alpha. Let's go look at the omega, the beginning and the end. I'm not talking about variants, by the way, Greek letters. So let's talk about the endgame and the exit strategy. So Professor Monica Gandhi, University of California, direct quotes, "I truly believe we are in the endgame." So very encouraging, medical professor, very highly qualified, well known. Cases will start plummeting in mid to late September. Well, interesting. They mutate quickly at a cost to themselves. So what she's saying here is that these viruses mutate quickly and they often become less pathogenic and less transmissible. Now, what typically happens when a virus infects lots of people, then the viruses that infect someone and kill them, they're likely to be the most virulent viruses. The viruses that infect someone and don't kill them, they're likely to be less virulent viruses. And of course, dead people can't pass on the virus, so a virus tends to become less and less virulent via this selective evolutionary pressure over time. But to put it quite bluntly, I don't think this virus is killing enough people to facilitate that. Now, I'm delighted it's not killing people, but I don't really think it's killing enough people that this typical sort of viral evolution will carry on. So I'm not entirely sure I agree with Professor Gandhi on that one. We're sort of at the peak of the pandemic because the Delta variant is causing immunity like crazy. Well, that's true. It's running right through. She's talking about the United States here, of course, primarily. Delta comes in like a hurricane, but it leaves a lot of immunity in its wake. Interesting. So even although things are appalling at the moment in the United States, people are becoming immune at a very, very fast rate. And that includes, we believe, greatly increased immunity for people that have been vaccinated and been exposed to the virus. And she says we're all going to get it. Now, what I believe Professor Gandhi means from this is everyone is going to get this virus. Everyone's going to be exposed to it, and as we've seen, the side effects and the complications from the vaccine are consistently less in all of the major vaccine side effects compared to the complications of getting the disease. That's why we now know, I believe my complete understanding is you're safe for getting the vaccine, because if you don't, you're going to get this infection. And all the risks like the blood clots and everything are much higher if you actually get the infection as opposed to someone who gets the vaccine. So that's interesting views there from Professor Gandhi. Unless you just sit in your room, you're going to get it in your nose. So there you go. She said everyone's going to get it. Everyone's going to get it. But at least in this country, it will be manageable, she believes, which is good. Now, Professor Gandhi's not always been right, which she'd be first to admit, of course. United States would not tolerate a disease that killed 100 plus Americans a day. People will come together to do whatever it took to stop it. Well, that didn't happen in February 20, did it? Anyway, another professor, Professor Emmanuel, University of Pennsylvania. In March 2020, the country should be back to normal by November 2021. Okay, I think it's backpedaled a bit from that now. He has, in fact. It's going to be at least spring 2022 and possibly much longer before most people are ready to resume normal life. So the same man, completely different view. So if he's right then, he's wrong then. If he's right then, he's wrong then. Let's just look at one more example of this before I make the main point here. Professor Jay Bhattacharya, Stanford University. The emergent phase of the disease is over. Now we need to work very hard to undo the sense of urgency. We should be treating COVID as one of the 200 diseases that affect people. So basically, this professor seems to be thinking it's over. But just to remind people, he did sign the Great Barrington Declaration on the 4th of October 2020, along with this professor from a certain university called Harvard and this professor from a certain university called Oxford. And most people now agree, at least the World Health Organization are agreeing, and most governments and Anthony Fauci and all official people basically agreeing that if they'd instigated that back in October 2020, it would have been disastrous. Disastrous. Where's the accountability? Where's the accountability here? These big professors get things wrong, but no one seems to sack them. At least if I get things wrong, I'll apologise publicly, but it doesn't seem to be happening. Although Professor Gandhi was quite reasonably contrite that she does get things wrong, which of course is reassuring, because some people think we often lack humility in academia and medicine. So there we go. That is quite interesting and roughly where we're at the moment. What do I think is going to happen? Well, I agree that immunity is spreading widely. I do think that in the United States, although hospitalizations are going up, they should be manageable to a large extent, although there is extreme pressure in certain southern states, as we've seen at the moment. The UK, things are still going up, albeit relatively gradually. We've got autumn to come. That's going to be a time of concern. This disease is not going to go away in 2021. I believe we're still going to be worried about this by Christmas time and possibly into the next year. But as immunity increases, as Professor Gandhi says, the hurricane of the Delta variant leaves a lot of immunity in its wake. I believe a lot of people are going to become really quite immune. I am immensely concerned where this virus can still run rampant through unvaccinated populations in poorer countries. We need to get people that initial vaccine coverage, then they can get infected when it matters so much less. But getting infected with no vaccine coverage at all is a dangerous thing to do. So let's hope the technology worked today, and thank you for bearing with me.